Just to say, we're here on behalf of a team of four of us. And unfortunately, for various reasons, John and Caitlin aren't able to join us today, but have very much part of the team and contributed to the material that we're going to share with you. So the project is called Religious Toleration and Peace, with a rather nice acronym of RETOPEA. And we've subtitled it Creative Learning with History, and we'll be saying rather more about what that means as we go through the presentation. And to highlight three key elements of what the project is about developing an innovative interdisciplinary approach to promoting cultural, religious and historical literacy, I mean, especially among young people. And we've been targeting particularly the upper age range of secondary school from 13 to 18. It's also about enabling them to internalize an understanding of religious toleration and peace through actively engaged learning rather than just being talked at. And crucially, it involves them making short films and enhancing thereby their creative, critical and team working skills. I'd now like to show you a short film that was produced by the production company we collaborated on an original European funded part of the project. I hope the sound works, but if it doesn't, could somebody duly prompt me, please?
RETOPEA is a Europe-wide educational project. It relates history to the present day and promotes religious toleration and peace.
And it does that in a really innovative way, not by traditional book-style written learning, but by challenging the young people to make documentaries about it.
I think our young people really benefited from the experience of RETOPEA, whether it was discussing the sources or filming.
I think if we want to be multicultural, we want everyone to feel as included as possible.
The idea is to inform and enrich particularly young people's thinking and to inspire ways forward towards peaceful religious coexistence.
Young people learn a different way of looking to the past, more contextualized, more critical, and more complex.
I learned about a society where Christians, Muslims, Jews were all welcome.
He's like an example of like progressive attitudes back in the past, and I didn't know that there was like people like that back then. So yeah, that was really interesting.
We provide them educational materials in order for them to reflect in a way that they can connect the past with the present and with their own experience.
Hola, me llamo Cristóbal.
It's important for young people to think about religious peace and toleration because we live in a multicultural society.
Making a video about it is a very different sort of part of your brain being used than conventionally sort of doing an activity, just reading a source, answering a question.
Hassan, what are you most proud of?
The teamwork.
They also develop a whole raft of really important 21st century skills: visual literacy, communication and digital skills.
After you've planned all the shots, seeing a plan come to fruition in an image was really nice. Yeah.
All the students sort of found at some point something that they could really excel at.
During the editing, I'm actually the one who did most of the work.
A couple of them in particular really excelled.
It was fun, yeah. It was fun to do.
Well, it feels very professional, although we're not professionals.
We show young people how common people, like all of us, have the ability to change the world we live in into a better place.
Right, that was a film made in what was an earlier phase of the project, which was funded under Horizon 2020. And this screen lists our partners of that project in the upper part of the screen. I mean, a range of partners across Europe in Belgium, Finland, Estonia, Poland, Spain, North Macedonia, and Germany. Primarily academic partners, but we also worked with an NGO in Macedonia and a group working with refugees in Belgium. So there was quite a bit of stakeholder engagement built into the project. More recently, thanks to the Culham St Gabriel's Trust, which are a funder specifically for religious education related activities, and to our own Open Societal Challenges programme within the OU, we were able to run a further series of workshops, particularly strengthening our presence in the UK, moving beyond engagement with schools just in London to cover Belfast and we hope some schools, a school in Wales as well, and generally also boosting our engagement with also some international partners, including those in Albania and in Jordan. So that was a broadening out of the project and diversifying our experience over the last year or so.
The workshops were held, we tried out lots of different formats, and we held them in schools in quite formal contexts, but also in an informal educational context with refugee groups in Belgium and Jordan as well, and lots of different age groups. So between 12 and 22 was the age, were the ages that we had participants. We ran 17 workshops altogether in different countries. 7 of those were in the UK, and they typically run over 3 days. Oh, I get a security alert for some reason. Never mind. It's just the day, isn't it? I'm sharing it now. So they typically run over sort of 12 to 13, 14 hours, and we tried out different formats. So basically, sometimes there would, if a school, for example, had a project week, we could do 3 full days with young people in school. Sometimes we also tried a format where it ran during regular lessons, but over a much longer period of time. So, but the basic structure of the workshops are always the same. So basically, it involves a phase for we call the phases engage, plan, create, and reflect. So the aim of the workshops is to use the creative process of filmmaking to get young people to reflect on religious diversity in the past and present. So in the engage phase, we really start talking to people, to the young people. It's all about discussion of concepts of toleration and peace, what they know about these concepts already, how they feel about them, and we also engage them with materials that were produced by the first phase of the RETOPEA project, the international project. So we have a collection of over 400 what we call clippings on the RETOPEA website, and these are short text extracts or images or short films that are curated with like a very short, brief context explanation and questions that can be used in educational contexts to engage young people with those sources. And they're arranged in different ways. So for example, in 12 different themes, and you can see 6 of those here that include gender and sexuality, migration, trade and travel, ideas about toleration. So there are different themes and different groupings we're suggesting as well for teachers. So teachers can use them afterwards themselves as resources in different ways. But as the first engaged part of the workshop, we build the discussion around a selection of those resources. So usually a selection of about maybe 5 clippings, depending on the age group. And older age groups, we actually let the young people choose. We gave them more choice as to which clippings they wanted to focus on. So just to give you a quick example of what the clippings look like, these are built around different peace agreements as well in the past and present as well, different conflicts and agreements. So this is an example of a text clipping relating to the Good Friday Agreement, which includes a text extracts from the Good Friday Agreement and with some context and questions. We also have clippings that have maps. Here's an example of the map of Northern Ireland and the different religious groups living in Northern Ireland and where they live. But also sometimes photographs. So, for example, this is an example of pictures of the peace walls in Belfast, and to really prompt discussion around, you know, what it's like to live in a city like this, whether this is a good way of keeping peace and what it might mean to the people living there and how it relates to the young people's own context. So in the plan phase, we get young people to plan their films. So they work together in small groups of typically 3 or 4 students, and they make plans for their films and spend, you know, time writing a script. And at the end of this phase, they pitch it to the they pitched it to us, but they would pitch it to the teacher if it was held by the teacher themselves. And they discussed their ideas with us and explained what they were planning on doing. Then they in the create phase, they actually make the film. So they go out and film. They didn't necessarily go out. I think there's lots of different approaches they can take, but in some ways they have different options as to how they make the film. So they can either have pieces spoken to camera. Some young people made drawings or incorporated drawings or maps into their films, or they interviewed each other, had short reconstructions of or dramatizations of historical events. They used objects that they explained, or they shot landscapes or buildings or locations in their own locality. We also, in some cases, for example, in Estonia, they were taken to a local museum where they filmed objects and discussed them. So there's lots of different approaches that they can take, and it depended very much on the facilities that were available to. And in some cases, the young people didn't leave the classroom. In others, they were able to go out, obviously with relevant consent and support. So after the film is made, and usually we aim for the film to be about 3 minutes long, which doesn't sound very long, but it does take quite a lot of time to make it. So in the create phase doesn't just include the filming, it also includes the editing, which it takes quite a long time to edit a 3 minute long film. Then finally we get the young people to show the film to the rest of the group, and in some cases actually they showed them to their whole school afterwards, or to a larger group, but also after the screening to reflect on how they found the process, and asking them, for example, how they made decisions about what to include in the film, how they work together, what they learned through the process. And actually what they've felt about seeing other people's films as well. So in terms of the evaluation of that, so far, and I say so far because we have got further workshops planned, 174 young people have taken part in our workshops across Europe, and John has already mentioned the different countries we've been working with. And we evaluated those through small group interviews, participant observation, and also questionnaires before and after the workshops. And of those who answered the questionnaires, and I should say in some cases we didn't always use questionnaires for every workshop, partly because there were some circumstances where actually it was more effective to interview people, so there's different, we used like mixed methodologies, but 74% of the workshop participants completed the evaluation questionnaires, and the vast majority of those agreed that they felt that the project had helped them to think about religious toleration and peace in new ways, and they felt that making a Docutube film helped them learn about religious peace and toleration. And I should say Docutube is the term we use for the short documentary style films that they're making. And 96% said they really enjoyed making the film. And actually that was the thing, that the enjoyment was a really important part of this, because they're really engaged in the process. Here's some quotes from participants saying, for example, I mean, this is these were comments that came back as part of the evaluation, saying, for example, peace is fragile. As a society, we need to be proactive as we continue to build better relationships between different communities. The discussions we had opened up new thoughts about religious toleration and gaining different perspectives. Through the RETOPEA program, I realized that difference is okay. In fact, difference, in particular religious diversity and difference, is something worth celebrating. I do not think toleration is a strong enough word. We should not just put up with other people. We must celebrate them in all their uniqueness. And there were lots and lots of comments that we have. These are just a few examples. In terms of the key findings, there's quite a few, as you can see. We felt what our project really showed is that a creative approach, like of filmmaking, and engaging with history in that way and different historical examples, is a really good way of engaging young people in thinking about the past and present. Really, the multi-sensory hands-on approach can support deep learning. And what we quite often found is when people, teachers taking part, or educators or youth workers taking part in the workshops or observing them, told us that quite often young people who wouldn't usually engage in lessons did. And I think that's incredibly important, that it was, it felt like it engaged a quite wide range of different young people from really different backgrounds. It was really important for us to give the young people quite a lot of room for exploration and creative freedom. So sometimes, I mean, when we talked to teachers in advance of a workshop, I had this once in a youth group in Macedonia, where the youth worker said, you need to give them more boundaries. You need to tell them what to film and what to do. And he actually was really kind of worried that it really wouldn't work at all. And we came up, the young people came up with absolutely fantastic results and feedback quite strongly that they really appreciated having the space to actually make some sort of creative decisions themselves and think about what they could focus on in their films, obviously in discussion with us, but to actually give them space to explore and think about the issues with each other and make some decisions about the content of the films was really important to them. And actually for us, the whole the fact that the workshops were very much framed by discussions and so discussions that created, I mean, for us it was quite important to create an environment that felt like a safe space to speak out, and that's what young people fed back to us, that was really important to them, so so they could express their own opinions and share their experience. And talk to each other. And quite often young people would, the participants were saying, oh, I didn't know this about my classmate, that they were actually had an Orthodox Christian mum and a Muslim dad or something. It was just, quite often the atmosphere was really really helpful to facilitate these kind of discussions, and that was really important. And some feedback of the earlier pilot workshops that we ran was that actually young people felt that they wanted to have more time for discussion in the workshops, which we incorporated. So it was also quite interesting that young people really wanted to learn. A lot of young people said that they felt it inspired them to learn more about different religious traditions and religious history in their own local environment, and find out more about their city, their school, their family, their friends. So the local environment was quite important, actually understanding where this was coming from, and the filming process was quite nice, because quite often they're engaged with their local environment in this process. We felt that the process of making the Docutube film, the short film, was much more important than the end result. So some of the films are really, really nice and impressive, bearing in mind that they only had a very short time to make them. But actually the process of working together in a team was, and discussing the issues together and coming to conclusions as to what to include in the film, how to put it together, filming together, was a really important process in itself. And filmmaking is quite is an incredibly collaborative process. So, and as one of the teachers said in the film, there's a role for everybody in it. Some people really don't want to be in front of camera and feel much more comfortable behind the camera and in supporting the process of making the film. Others are really happy being in front of the camera. So there's lots of different roles in the process. Some feel more comfortable editing. It felt like there was a place for lots of different skills and different places in the process that young people felt comfortable with. And really, it is a really good way of learning to work together as a team and collaborate and learn with and from others. And they develop a really wide range of skills, including critical thinking, cultural, historical, religious, media literacy, team working, communication skills, you name it. As it's a very rich process. I think I'm handing over to John again.
Great. Thanks, Steffi. I suggest you keep control of the PowerPoint, and
I will do.
And I'll prompt you when to move on. But moving on really to saying something about our outputs from the project and also next steps. And one key output from the EU-funded phase of the project was an Open Learn course, which we developed. And essentially, this is targeted at teachers and more broadly at educators. I mean, for example, sort of youth group leaders who are working with young people. And it's essentially a sort of how to do it kind of course, giving them ideas about religious toleration and I mean some basic background on the concepts, but also then very practical guidance about developing and running these workshops. And interestingly, we were having a meeting with the Department for Education yesterday, and they seemed quite keen about looking into this, assessing what we produced and seeing whether they would help to promote it much more widely to schools. So that's quite an exciting output. It's also, in the context of the EU project, been translated into multiple languages. It's also available in Dutch, French, Spanish, German, and Polish.
So are the clippings, maybe to mention that as well. The clippings are as well, the RETOPEA clippings on the website.
So that's available on Open Learn, and thanks to the EU grant developed entirely without additional cost to the OU. If we could move on, Steffi. And then next steps. We're hoping to reapply to Culham St Gabriel's Trust for some more funding, as they've been very encouraging at the outcomes from the project to date. And we think we may well have a sort of training the trainers kind of emphasis for another phase of the project. We've already done some of this, delivering some workshops at H2020, which was a forum for teachers of religious education, and at Euroclio, which is a corresponding forum for teachers of history and citizenship, both on a European scale, but also looking to plug into the comparable UK-based networks. We've also, as I say, been seeking to engage at a policy level. We held a policy event at Westminster, just around the corner from Parliament, at the end of January, with quite an exciting sort of cross section of people there. And partly as a follow-up from that, we had a meeting with civil servants from DFE just yesterday.
So apologies, there's a typo on the slide. It should be January 24 for the Westminster event.
Yeah. And that arose in part from us getting a mention in the House of Lords debate on religious education. So we do hope we're getting a bit of traction at a policy level in terms of sort of influencing future discussions, for example, about curricula and but also what, as one of the civil servants we were talking to put it, giving schools resilience in terms of the kind of issues they do wrestle with and lead to prevent style interventions. And future plans, we hope to take part in a further workshop in Wales, thereby extending from 2 nations to 3 nations in the UK context. We've already run a couple of workshops in Northern Ireland, one in a Catholic school and one in a Protestant one. And certainly our longer term aspiration would be to run a workshop in Scotland, so we have the 4 nation scope. And potential future funding bids, as I say, with both Culham St Gabriel Trust and perhaps more ambitiously with the AHRC. Can we have the next slide, Steffi? And in terms of published outcomes, we've all contributed to a volume from an academic perspective of mediating the past to the young religious diversity in Europe, which came out now a couple of years ago. There's a forthcoming book which is more targeted at teachers rather than academics, about teaching and learning about religious diversity in past and present, which is taking a range of case studies around particular treaties and events, and providing some documentary source material that students and their teachers could work with there. And particularly highlighting that kind of aspect of a project, which doesn't necessarily need engagement with the filmmaking aspect, but does give, we would argue, students different perspectives on the past and wider issues of religious diversity. And we have plans for refereed journal articles to be developed in the near future. I think some things are beginning to take shape in draft. So quite a lot still going on.